before I begin, I'll give you some information on myself, who I am and where I'm coming from. I come from Calgary, Alberta. I'm a dentist by profession. And I was born actually in Saskatchewan, in a little town of Lethbridge, Saskatchewan. It's a little, I don't think it exists on the map anymore. But I was raised midway between Cudworth and Walta, Saskatchewan, right on the number 2 highway actually. I was born a Greek Orthodox, and though I did not follow the Orthodox faith, when I was about 16, the ritualistic mode of the Orthodox Church did not appeal to me at all. And so I found it necessary to move to a different church. And of course, the only other Protestant church in the town that I was in was the United Church of Canada. And so I became a member of the United Church. And I was a member of that church for 31 years. And continued to work in that church all that time. Now, I graduated from dentistry in 1957, and I came home to my hometown in Elk Point, Alberta. In 1947, when I was 15, my father relocated from Saskatchewan to Alberta. The land he had in Saskatchewan lacked water, a good water supply, so we moved to Alberta. And so I started my dental practice in my hometown of Elk Point. As I was starting my dental practice and getting to know some of the business people in town and some of the people around it, like in the farming community, I was encouraged to join the Masonic Lodge, which I did. And I became very active within the Masonic Lodge, and I held all the offices within the lodge except for secretary, treasurer, and master of ceremonies. I became a master mason, a worshipful master of that lodge. And I sold masonry to everybody. Everybody I seen, I talked about masonry, and I talked about what I thought was the good points of masonry, not knowing myself what I was really into. Just like most masons don't know what they're really into. And so, being a member of that church, I was very liberal in my views. I was actually a very liberal Christian, and at the same time, a member of the lodge. In 1983, 84, I had moved to a little town of Carbon, Alberta. And there, I was invited to attend the evangelical church. When we were packing our boxes in our place, neighbors came to visit us from across the street and asked us if we'd like to go to church with them next Sunday. And so I said yes, without asking him at all what church it was or anything like that. And then, when they left the house, I said to my wife, gee, you know, what churches are we going to tomorrow morning? You know, maybe these people are Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, and so we waited to see. And that morning we went to church, and that was the North American Baptist congregation. And believe me, it was the first time that I had heard the gospel preached. In the United Church, I heard so much of the social gospel preached from the pulpits that it was coming out of my ears. When I was young, I thought this was fantastic, you know. But as I grew older, I realized that there was no teaching. When we moved to Carbon, we moved to Carbon from Lethbridge, and at that time we were active within the church. I was teaching senior Sunday school class. not my issue, wife and I. But we were beginning to become very uneasy within that church, and the reason for that was that there was beginning to be articles within the church magazine regarding the ordination of homosexuals, and also the use of inclusive language. And this was very, it was disturbing to us. That was quite a large church. There was 2 pastors in that church. And so the associate pastor was quite young, about my age, or maybe a little younger. And I asked him over to my house one day, specifically to talk about homosexuality and the position of the church on it. Now, at that time, being a liberal Christian, I had a good-sized liquor bar in the house, because I drank and gambled and did everything that most liberals do. So I asked this fellow if he wanted to drink a rye, Coke. He said, sure. So as we talked that evening, and he had 3 or 4 drinks of rye and Coke, he began to really open up and really tell me what he really believed. So he told me that there was no virgin birth, that there was no Satan, that there was no sin in the world. Homosexuality was a gift from God, and that there was no parts of the Bible that really said anything against homosexuality. And me being ignorant of the word, I couldn't respond to it. And so I really got angry. And my wife and I said, you know, we have to leave this church, but where are we going to go? What church are we going to go to? So we said, well, maybe we'll try all the churches. We'll go one Sunday to one church, one Sunday to another. You know, this consumerism type of church attendance, to see just what's there. But we happened to be led to Carbon. Now, I'll tell you, Carbon is a little town of 485 people. There's almost no shopping there. But we had gone to Three Hills on 3 different occasions to try and see when we could settle there. And for some reason, things weren't adding up. I went to Drumheller about 3 times, and things weren't settling there. In fact, there was a United Church minister in Drumheller, which was a friend of mine who had pastored a church in Elk Point. We went to see him there, and we told him how unhappy we were with the United Church. And he said, well, you know, if it does not fulfill your needs, then I would encourage you to look elsewhere. So we're driving down Highway 21, and Iris is looking on a map, and there is a little town of Carbon, and she says, you know, it's about 3 miles off the road, let's stop in there. So we drove into Carbon, a little town, a little village nestled in between 2 valleys. Real low, you wouldn't even know it's there. Okay? But anyway, we drove to the town, and we drove around the town, and we looked at each other, and everything seemed to be just right. And we said, you know, this is the place. So we started looking around town, down the little main street, and we found a little insurance office, and said insurance and realty like little towns have. And so we stopped in there and asked them if there was anything for rent in town or to purchase, and then there was nothing to rent. There was one house for sale, but we looked at it. We weren't interested in buying it, but we would rent it. And so the lady at the office said, well, that belongs to my brother and sister-in-law there at Rainbow Lake with the oil fields, and we'll phone and see if they'll rent it, though they really want to sell it. So we rented a little house. And that's where my wife and I both were led to the Lord in 1984 in November. And that was our first walk with the Lord. I was 53 years old. I spent most of my life in the wilderness. And I had many, many things to change. Tremendous amount of things to change.